Hey, it's Kevin DeWitt here. Welcome back to the Mixing in a Home Music Studio course. In this video, we're going to talk about mixing in mono. So firstly, if you are new to my channel, new to my videos, and you like what you see, click the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell to be notified of all my future videos. So mixing in mono, this is probably a weird technique if you've never heard of it before, but it's a little trick that I learned from somewhere. I don't remember where. It's been going around for a while now, and it is a concept of basically setting your software to mono and mixing your entire song, or as much of it as you can, while listening to it in mono, getting all the instruments placed right, getting all the frequencies, EQs, etc., so that you can hear as much of each of the instruments while they are stacked on top of each other in mono, right? This is the worst case scenario. When you're in mono, everything is on top of each other. There's no spreading them out to stand out from side to side. So you are forced to try and use techniques like volume and EQ and things like that to make sure that every single element in your song has its place in the frequency range. It has its place while sitting on top of each other. And then when you do switch to stereo, it then just opens up and it's just like bang, it just hits you like, oh my God, this sounds amazing. You may need to do some adjustments to volume levels and stuff like that when you've done that, but the general concept is that if you can make it sound good in mono, it is going to sound brilliant in stereo. That's the concept. Now, whether it works, that depends on how you get it to sound and what happens. Now, the other reasons to mix in mono is because as much as we think that we listen to everything in stereo all the time, there are locations and devices that are not. And there are elements in a song. It is quite common for people that are used to just doing things in stereo to make things totally out of phase and too wide, that when it does get played on a mono device, they cancel out and you don't hear it. So you may have this fantastic sounding, really wide, out of phase synth sound, and as soon as it gets on a mono device, it's gone, or it just disappears so far into the background because half the signal gets cancelled out that your song just falls apart. It sounds horrible. So you should always at least listen to your song in mono, but doing the mixing from the start means that you've made sure that all of those work and they all sound great together. Now, again, why? We listen to everything on stereo. Well, that's actually not correct. If for some reason you happen to have a song and it played out of, in a shopping center, somewhere else like that, right? Generally, you'll only be hearing it in mono. It's coming out of one speaker, or it'll seem like it's coming out of one speaker because it all blends together and hits you as one source. You're not sitting in front of two speakers. You may have devices like Apple HomePods. You may only have one of them. Well, it's going to be mono. A Sonos device, it might be mono. Amazon, Google, they've all got devices. They could be mono. Okay, it could be as simple as that. It could be you and a friend sitting there sharing a set of iPods while you're on a bus together and you're listening to the same music. Well, you only got one earpiece. You're hearing it in mono. Not going to be much good or entertaining to you if you can't hear it because you haven't got the other earpiece. So there's locations like that where things are mono, and it's just the way it is, right? We're not always sitting in a perfect place to hear things in stereo, so they will potentially blur together to become mono. So the best way to explain this would be to give you a practical example of it. So let's get into Cubase and I'll show you a little bit more about it and how we can possibly do that. Okay, so as you'll see here, I'm running Cubase Pro, so I've got some more advanced features that you may not have if you don't have the Pro version. So let's start off with the Pro version and how I would do it here, because it's quite simple. Now, you'll see over this section here, which you can hide or show, is the sort of the control room. And this is the most simplest way to do it in the Pro version, right? Because I always have this control room up and running, and it allows me to switch between various monitors that I have connected and do all other various things here as well, changing the volumes, dimming, etc. But you'll see here the simplest button of all, which is just labeled stereo. And if I click on that, suddenly we go to mono. So just to prove the point here, I've got a song. I've just got to turn down so it's not too loud. We switch to mono. Very convenient for checking our mono compatibility of our song. Make sure that no instrumentation's been lost or any feeling from the song in any great massive differences. You know, obviously in mono, you're going to lose some feel and it's not going to be sounding as good, but you just don't want anything obvious that just sounds absolutely horrible when you switch over to it. So it's as simple as that. But you might have the Pro version and you may not see that. You may not have access to that. And to get access to it, if you're not using the control room, and I suggest that you do because it is quite simple to use and very powerful, is you go up to Studio here. Depending on what version, it could be located in different menus. They keep moving these things around when you get latest versions. This version here is 9.5, so I've got the latest version. But if you find the audio connections section here, and this is where you've got all of your routing, all of your buses, your inputs, outputs. And what usually happens is if you're not running control room, you'll have your outputs here and they would be attached to, you know, your monitors would be attached to the ports on your audio interface. When you run control room, you actually blank these out. So the output section here does pretty much nothing. So nothing's established. And we go across to control room. Now you'll see this button here. This is on in my case, which means that the control room's on. So if I was to turn it off, it would disable control room. So once it's done that, you then are reliant on the section here in the output. So you would have to reconnect those up again. And you'll see here over on the side, all of that functionality has now been removed from this section here, and we've just got meters. Okay, so if we click along control room here, it says it's disabled and you lose all that functionality. So if that's what you see when you do that, then obviously what I'm saying is go into audio connections, go across to control room and turn it on. And once you turn it on, then this section here may actually be blank. And what you will need to do is add your channels. So you can create all of your different speakers. So what you'll see here, I've got A, B, C. So I've got 3 different monitor sections that I can switch between. So I have added, so if you go add channel, you can add up to 4 monitors. You can add some cues and talkback and external inputs, etc. But so you would go there, just go add, and then you can rename it and assign it to the actual interfaces on your audio interface, the ports on your audio interface. Now these look a little bit weird at the moment with this, and that's purely because of the way I have to have this set to do these videos. Normally this would be configured to go to my UAD Apollo, but I use this special program to allow the audio to be recorded within my video recording software here to do these videos. So that's why it looks a little bit weird. But you can see here, normally I have my main monitors here, which are focals. Then I have some mixing headphones, and then I have a general Sony hi-fi stereo connection that just goes to a normal household hi-fi system to allow me to monitor through that as well, so I can switch between each of those very quickly from the control room. And obviously we can do our stereo and mono here. And that's all you need to do. And then if you are like me and you want to switch between things, then you can obviously save a preset. So I've got some presets here to be able to change certain things, to go back to my normal studio setup on my Apollo, or to run this virtual voice meter software to record these videos. I can switch between them quite quickly. So that's what you do if you've got the Pro version. Now, if you don't have the Pro version, and let's hide that over there, what we want to do is we can do this in several ways. So we have our main output here, right? So I have a mix bus, and this is where I'm going to do everything here. You might have another output after that, but I'm not showing that. I like to do things on a mix bus. Now we could do it in a pseudo sort of way here. So you can see we've got a pan here. So in this case here, we're not using the control room. Okay, we may not want to use the control room, or we may not have the Pro version, so that functionality may not be included in our Cubase software. So at the moment, we've got our mix here and it's nice and stereo. So what we can do is we can actually change our panning to be center. Now, it's not very convenient to do this backwards and forwards, but it is something that you can do. So to center, and in theory now what we've got is a mono track because everything's been panned to the center on our main output, our mix bus. So that's pretty simple, right? That costs you nothing. We don't have to buy any plugins. We don't have to do anything. We don't even need a high-end version of Cubase. We can just do that straight away on this mix bus. And as I said, it's not real convenient, but it's not a pain, too much pain either. Just a quick couple of clicks there. If you were to do it, trying to drag it in, that would be painful. That's why I just double click on each side and just put a C in, and then hit enter. Double click on the other side, C, enter, done. Want to reverse it, double click, left, double click, R for right, and you're back to where you were. Okay, so what if you don't like that approach and you want to have something that you can quickly switch things on and off, and you want to use a plugin? Okay, we've got a couple of extra modes that I'm going to go with. First one here is that we can use a stereo enhancer plugin that comes with Cubase. Now, unfortunately, I don't know, because I have the Pro version, it is included in the Pro version. I don't know if it's included in the other versions. So if it's not, I'm sorry, because this might be a waste to show you this, but hopefully it is included in all the versions of Cubase. But if it's not, then obviously you can go to the next level. Worst case scenario, if none of the plugin situations work, control room doesn't work, then you've got the pan mode that I showed you before. But if you do have the stereo enhancer plugin, just place that on your mix bus. And you can see here, this is obviously designed to create more stereo width. That's what it's usually for. But you can actually narrow it, and even to the point they have a button here for mono compatibility check. So I'll play the mix and we'll turn that on and off. Okay, so hopefully that plugin is included in your version of Cubase, and if it is, very simple. Obviously, that's a lot faster than doing the panning mode there. You can have this plugin sitting there running all the time, and you can just open it up, click on that mono button, and you are done. Now, if you don't like that and you want to go for something else again, we can get another plugin, and this plugin is from Hoffa. It's the 4U Meter Fader and MS Pan, and it is free to download. So you can get it in VST format, AAX, all various formats of plugins for various types of DAWs. So if you're not a Cubase user and you want to have this functionality in Pro Tools or something like that, then you can use this plugin here because it is free and will work with all of those DAWs. But we're talking about Cubase here, so I have installed a VST version because I'm also on a PC. And you can see here we've got, this is obviously more advanced because it is a meter, so it's got lots of different functionality to it, but we have some simple buttons here that we can click to change the mode. And we can enable this mono button. So let's give that a shot when we turn it on. And we can even turn the meter off if we would like to make this even simpler. And we've got lots of advanced functionality here, but we can even flip the channels, whatever you want to do there. We can mute. So you could obviously keep this on your mix bus and use it for various features. You could just have it sitting there open all the time. All right, so we've got a mix here at the moment. I've just muted the vocals and all that sort of stuff, so because we don't really need that. I want to concentrate on the instrumentation. And this is what we've got in stereo. All right, sounds pretty good. I'm liking that. Guitars can be heard nicely, left and right, panning. All sounds great in stereo. So let's now put it in mono. So obviously this mix is already done. Okay, but let's imagine we're just starting out. And I'm just going to use this in stereo enhancer tool. Just put it in mono just to show using a plugin to make it mono. So when I switch that mono button on there, so that's what we're sounding like in mono now. So let's have a look. What I want to concentrate on is these guitars. So there's a couple of guitars here, but I might simplify it down. Okay, so in stereo, we had these 4 guitars here, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 2 of them away and I'm going to concentrate on one in the left and right because we've got some doubled up here just to add some texture. Now, the interesting thing with these guitars is this was actually a single take, and I actually reamped a lot of these through my Kemper with different amp models. So if you looked at the name there, you can see this one is a Kemper Mesa Boogie triple rectifier, and this one here is a Kemper diesel Hagner. I don't know how you actually say that, but it's German. So these are quite heavily distorted guitar tracks. So the trick with this is when we're in mono, we want to be able to make sure that we can hear both of those elements there. Now, this may be a little bit trickier with this one because it was a single take that's been duplicated and reamped. One of them has been delayed slightly because even with the reamping, it was still too similar and not quite giving the stereo effect. Okay, so what I would do is I would probably start with, say, one of the guitars, and I'd make sure that I had it sounding nice with the EQ. Then I would, so let's say we've got that EQ dialed in and we like that one there, just using the UAD SSL on this one. And then we switch over to the other one and I get that one sounding nice as well. So we've got a bit of an EQ here, settings. So let's say we've got them individually sounding right. Now, when we blend the two together, can we hear them independently in a way? Okay, we're not going to hear everything because they are going to share a fair bit of the same frequency range, but we just want to sort of be able to differentiate each one slightly. So what you want to hear there, because these are going to be very similar, what you want to hear is, obviously there's going to be a level difference as I'm taking them in and out, but what I'm listening for is not necessarily the level difference. I'm listening for the change in character and sound. I want to hear that I'm missing the other one. Okay, so might not be so clear, but when you remove one, you can hear that something has been taken away, some frequency range has been taken away, or some quality's been taken away from the mix. And I've done that both ways. So for instance, I've got the two together and then I take the right one away, and then I have them together and I take the left one away and I just have a listen. And if I'm not noticing much change, then to me, I need to do something more drastic. Okay, now you'll see here, these EQs are set pretty much the same, but the difference is that the actual amps that they've been reamped to, they sound different. So they already have a difference in their EQ range and sound. So we've got that benefit there, but we can use our EQ to even expand that even more. So let's say we're not noticing enough of a difference. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say pick one of them and I'm going to make that one, say, brighter, or a bit more top end to it, or a bit more high mids. So we might say we're going to push that one a bit, but we don't want to, if we push that up, we might want to drop down a bit of the lower end stuff. And then on the opposite, we might want to say, take this one here and reduce its high range and boost its low range. So we've got complementing parts then. So let's compare with and without again. So you can hear there, when we've got the two together, we've got a nice thick sound. It's not too bright, it's not too dull. But when we take this first guitar away, because we've got our EQ set this way, this one's now dark. So you can hear we're missing that top end. And then obviously the opposite happens with the other way, where we lose the low end and we've got some thinness there. Okay, now if these were actually two different guitar parts that were played as two different takes or by two different guitarists, there'd be slightly different differences in the playing, so we would notice the separation a lot more with these. And we don't need to go to these drastic steps of, boosting one with top end and one with low end, but you want some variance of difference of EQ field there so that you're getting a nice thick sound with the two together, but you can also discern each one in the mix and you can hear each part. Now, obviously, if they're playing different parts slightly, a little bit of variance in their melody playing or their chord playing, then the EQ will help those both pop out of the mix. So that's an example of what you can do now. And you can imagine you're not going to want to come back to this further down the track if you were doing this at the end of the mix. So let's say we've got that now and it's balanced the way we want it. Now if we switch back over to stereo, they still sound great. Okay, so they still sound great in stereo because your ears are still merging the two sounds together in a way, but also keeping them separate, left and right. The frequency ranges are still blending together to give you that full range. But now they also sound great when placed in mono. So what's an example of, say, an issue here? So let's say, for instance, we've duplicated an exact part and we want to go for a stereo widening type effect. But what we've decided to do is we're going to play with the phase. So we've got one right, we've got one pan left. And at the moment, if we would just listen to it, it'll come out mono. Now, if I was to phase this deliberately, then suddenly it sounds stereo. That's great. No worries. So imagine that, this is obviously something that's probably not the smartest thing to do, but, there is a trick of trying to get your instruments wider than the speakers and sticking out the side. And you can do that with phase reversal. But so that you might deliberately do this, but imagine you've just got a couple of mics that are slightly out of phase and you're not aware of it and it's sounding good in stereo. But then as soon as I switch it over to mono, because these are exactly the same, we have silence. There is nothing playing. Stereo, it's there. Mono, not there. So this is the obvious problem that I'm talking about hearing. This is obviously a deliberate act, so this is the extreme of the extreme. You would hope that this would never happen, but you can get that. So even if this was slightly different, let's say we EQ'd this one a bit differently, or we turn the EQ off altogether. So by itself, it sounds like this. And in stereo, we add the guitar in, it sounds like this. But as soon as we go to mono, we get this. And what's happening is it's phase cancelling out majority of the signal except for the component that's different. And because I've done a little bit of a different EQ here, those EQ changes and differences are what is coming out. The rest of the signal is being phase cancelled out. So this is what can happen in your song depending on what tracks you have in that. So this is why I suggest it's definitely a good idea to check your mix in mono at various stages to avoid anything like this happening. There's nothing worse than getting your song out to the public and it sounds great in stereo and then suddenly goes, oh, there's all these bits missing. It doesn't sound right. And it's because you're getting this in your mix, as opposed to which is what you wanted to happen. So if we put it in context with the other guitars here, so we'll start off in stereo and you can hear, I guess, what I was trying to achieve. And then when I switch to mono, you'll hear the end result if I was hearing it on a mono mix. So you can hear the rhythm guitars can still be heard. Yes, they don't sound as good as they do in stereo, nothing ever will, but they're still clearly heard, they're still present. But the lead guitar disappears. It disappears behind the rhythm guitars there. And this is, again, like I said, this is why you definitely need to check your mixes in mono. So there you go, that is mixing in mono. Let me know what you think of it in the comments. Do you agree with it? Is it something you do on your mixes if you already are mixing? If you're not and you're about to start, is it something that you think you will do? Do you see the advantage in it? Do you see why it could be a good idea? Let me know in the comments. Also, if you need further clarification or if something didn't make sense or I didn't explain something properly, please put it in the comments. I read all the comments and I'll answer as many of the comments as I possibly can, as quickly as I can. If you did like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell to be notified of all my future videos. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.